Hey guys, it's Livy. Welcome to my channel Astro Gossip. Even though recently the COVID-19 situation has kind of died down, there's still a lot of people who are confined to their own homes. In fact, recently, there's also been talks about this virus having a second wave. So I thought I'd still take the time today to talk about COVID-19 and try to uncover some mysteries behind this global pandemic. I'm sure everyone's wondered at some point over the last 3 months, why did COVID-19 happen? How did it happen? And where did it come from? I mean, technically, it's not the first time we faced a global virus of this sort. So why is this time so serious and out of control? If you look at it, just within the last 20 years, we've encountered SARS in 2003, swine flu in 2009, and MERS in 2012. But none of these have had as much of a global impact as the current COVID-19 situation. I mean, if you look at them, most of these viruses have had higher death rates than COVID-19. But none of these other epidemics actually caused a global economic shutdown. When was the last time you remember whole countries shutting down and closing its borders? Do you ever recall social distancing measures being put into place on a global level? So why now? How come we're facing this global transformation? Well, like many of you, I've also been searching online and reading news articles every day trying to follow this COVID-19 progression and trying to see if I can find some theories pointing to the actual cause of the situation. To tell you the truth, some of the theories I've been reading is extremely ridiculous. I mean, if you believe them, no judgment. But come on, are you honestly telling me to believe that the US military purposely brought the virus over to China and dumped it there just to mess with them? Another theory said that this virus was created in a Chinese lab in Wuhan and somehow escaped the lab. What is this, some kind of Frankenstein movie gone wrong? But to be honest, none of these theories even come close to the 5G theory. For those of you who haven't heard, there are actually people out there who believe that the electromagnetic fields generated by 5G devices is what's causing this COVID-19 pandemic. So what is the truth behind COVID-19? Well, to tell you the truth, I actually don't know. And the last thing I want to do is to throw out another stupid hypothesis and try to explain what's causing this virus in the first place. Instead, what I want to do today is to look at Asian and Western astrology and try to explain why 2020 had such a high chance of bringing forth one of the largest pandemics of our lifetime. Today, I want to use an ancient methodology that's been passed down from generations throughout Chinese history and shed some light into this transformative year. This is the same methodology that's been used by many Asian fortune tellers, and it's also the same set of principles used to define various feng shui guidelines that people use today. So for those of you who have Asian friends around you, I'm sure some of you have heard of the 12 different Chinese zodiac animals. You've probably heard people saying things like, I was born in the year of the tiger, or the year of the pig usually brings me luck. But have you ever wondered why? If we look back in ancient China, they had a very different method of calculating time compared to us. Instead of counting years using numeric numbers and categorizing them by decades or centuries, in East Asian society, they used to categorize calendar years using a methodology called the sexagenary cycle. Each sexagenary cycle has 60 years, and the 60-year cycle was determined based on the relationship between Earth, Sun, and Moon rotation. Each year was depicted using a combination of two characters. The first character is represented by one of the 10 celestial stems, and the second character uses one of the 12 terrestrial branches. The celestial stems originated from an ancient Chinese belief that there were 10 suns in the sky, which later evolved to the 5 elements we use most common today: metal, water, wood, fire, and earth. Each of the 5 elements has 2 celestial stem characters connected to it. Therefore, each element lasts for 2 years before moving on to the next elemental year. The terrestrial branches might be a little bit more familiar to most people, since it's essentially the 12 zodiac animals. By combining the 2 characters together, it made up the 60 years within the sexagenary cycle. Therefore, in addition to hearing people talk about the year of the rat or the year of the pig, you might also hear some people mentioning the year of the water rat or the year of the metal pig. If we follow the sexagenary cycle, the year 2020 is the year of the metal rat. According to Chinese astrologers, the year of the metal rat is always a year that triggers a major calamity across China. If we look back in history, some of the biggest tragic events that hit China all happened in the year of the metal rat. The first Opium War between Britain and China happened in 1840. The Boxer Rebellion, when 8 nations decided to invade China and seize control of the Chinese capital, happened in 1900s. The Great Chinese Famine, which resulted in the death of over 36 million people, happened in 1960. And now, the COVID-19 virus, which has resulted in a worldwide pandemic, has hit our world in 2020. So why is the year of the metal rat such a dramatic year? Well, according to the sexagenary cycle, the year of the metal rat marks the start of the 60-year calendar cycle. Therefore, this year usually marks a very transformative year. In addition, when we look at the 5 elements, it was believed that the elements also function in a cycle where one element gave birth to another. Metal gave birth to water, water to wood, wood to fire, fire to earth, and earth back to metal. So if we follow the cycle, we can see that the metal element gives birth to the water element. Therefore, during a metal year, the water element is also extremely strong. If we look at the element water, it's known as one of the most fluid and transformative elements out of the 5. Think of a huge waterfall or a tsunami. A year with a strong water presence basically symbolizes a year where everything can be washed away, taking with it good and bad, and resetting everything back to zero. So if you look at these two together, the year of the metal rat is not only the start of the 60-year sexagenary cycle, it's also a year when the water element is extremely strong, bringing with it drastic changes to the world we know today. Now, you may ask, so if you look back in all of the events that happened in the year of the metal rat, everything seems to only affect China and maybe some of its surrounding regions. So how come in 2020, we're dealing with a pandemic that's affecting the entire world? To answer this question, we have to look at Western astrology. Western astrology primarily focuses on the relationship between the stars and the planets. Just like how your horoscopes are defined, other phenomena can also be attributed to the rotations of our planet and the relationship between various stars in our universe. If we look at our planet rotations, 2020 is a year that only comes about every few thousand years. 2020 is also known as a year of the Great Transformation. It's a year where Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto are conjunct in Capricorn, which means that if we're looking at these 3 planets from Earth, we can see all 3 planets lining up in one straight line inside the house of Capricorn. The last time this phenomenon happened was in 1894 BC, and that was the birth year of Babylon City, which later grew to be one of the largest cities in the world from 1770 to 320 BC. So why is this astrological conjunction called the year of the Great Transformation? Well, if we look at the properties of the 3 planets and what each one symbolizes, we'll be able to see the clear connection between this and what's happening to our planets today. To start, Saturn represents compression and restriction. This is a planet that governs structure, law, and discipline, and it's also the natural ruler of Capricorn. Therefore, when Saturn is inside the house of Capricorn, its characteristics are magnified. Jupiter, on the other hand, represents expansion, knowledge transfer, and abstract thinking. It's the largest gas giant in our solar system, and 90% of its body mass is made from hydrogen. So when both planets come together in one line under the house of Capricorn, we have massive compression and massive expansion, which, similar to the Big Bang Theory, leads to an explosion. In addition, the planet Pluto represents destruction, elimination, and transformation. This planet usually brings about complete change and renewal. So when Pluto is thrown into the mix of this planetary conjunction, we have a complete rebirth of the world we know today. Now do you see why 2020 was such a unique year filled with destruction, uncertainty, and transformation? It's not only the year of the metal rat, which usually brings about calamity in East Asia. It's also the year of the Great Transformation, which takes that calamity and spreads it across the world. Okay, so I may have scared you a bit with all this talk about disaster and change. But honestly, it's not all that bad. Just like what Asian astrology preaches, with every bad there's good, with every darkness there's light. Everything in the world is about balance, so when you have a pandemic like COVID-19, there's also the light at the end of the tunnel. Aside from all the horrible events we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, we're also seeing a lot of rebirth and renewal. I mean, just look at the environment alone. There's drastic changes that are happening around us every day. Because of all the social distancing and business closures, wildlife and our ecosystem are flourishing. Countries where smog used to be the norm are now seeing bluer skies than ever. Cities which were once filled with car engines every day are now filled with birds chirping and little animals frolicking on the streets. And species that were previously endangered are starting to repopulate again due to the decrease in overfishing and overhunting. So as we're dealing with the tragic events of COVID-19, our world is actually renewing itself. In addition to all of this, we're also propelling ourselves to a new era in our lives. As businesses, communities, and families are trying to get used to this new norm, everyone's also finding new creative ways to operate and communicate. More and more meetings are happening virtually. E-commerce has propelled itself to new heights, and our digital landscape has never been as strong as it currently is today. 2020 is a year of change, so instead of pointing the finger at who's causing this pandemic, let's try to embrace what this change is bringing and propel ourselves to a new era. Well, that's it from me today. Thank you so much for listening to my channel, and if you like what I have to say, make sure you subscribe below so I can bring you more fun facts, gossip, and knowledge as we explore the mysterious universe of astrology together.